My childhood was closely tied to cinema. Even beyond the movie theater, that interest never faded. Over time, it only grew stronger. I remember thick bound volumes of Soviet screen magazines kept in my parents' home. They were stitched together with an ordinary shoelace, simple and sturdy. The large glossy spreads smelled pleasantly of fresh printing ink. Slowly turning page after page, I studied film scenes and familiar faces, memorizing the titles of new films. I could do this for hours until I began to anticipate what images would appear on the next spread. When I was done, I carefully placed the magazines back on the bookshelf until the next viewing session. After being read cover to cover, the magazines had lost all appeal for the adults. They were no longer their magazines, they were mine. With time, they grew into something more than just a collection of favorite pictures. I wanted more and more to understand how cinema was made, especially how movement is born from dozens of almost identical frames on film. How characters suddenly come alive on a screen. I asked my father about this. That was how I first learned about sets, makeup, and the various tricks used to shoot complex scenes. But what struck me most was discovering the secret of 24 frames per second. Knowing this made me feel part of a hidden mystery and filled me with quiet pride. Once I had peeked into that magical world, I wanted to create something similar, by myself, with my own hands. Soon came my first experiments, strips of paper with drawn frames, which I tried to turn into movies, just like on the big screen. Now, looking back on that childhood naivety, I smile and admire the stubbornness of that boy, his bold desire to understand and to create. From scraps of thick paper, I built a device that looked like a small box, gluing all the parts together. It had a tiny window, a screen behind which a paper strip with frames fed from one spool to another. I turned a metal rod with a handle bent from thick aluminum wire, and the strip moved. It resembled a children's slide projector, the one I dreamed of having. But my box had no bulb, no projection at all. The principle of 24 frames per second didn't work either. Still, it was my invention, and that was why I loved it so much. I even managed to draw a couple of strips with my own films and run them again and again. My favorite place for these childhood games was the white windowsill in one of the rooms of our old house. I didn't have my own desk yet. I wasn't in school. I was about 6. The window faced the street, and I watched it like a giant screen. Occasionally, a rare passerby would appear, stray dogs or a truck slowly crawling through the mud. Sometimes I even wrote down license plate numbers. On that same windowsill, I spun my paper cinema, and at the same time watched the real one just beyond the glass. But one winter morning, I found my movie box soaked and warped. Nearby, in a small puddle of water, lay my pencil and an unfinished strip for a new film. Tears welled up in my eyes. The inside of the window's pane was covered with thick, feathery ice patterns. Morning sunlight crept through them as if trying to peek inside. Snow crystals shimmered in its rays. The night frost and the morning sun had done their work. That winter was especially harsh. That day, I understood how fragile my construction had been, and I never built another one again. School was ahead of me. A different world was opening. Many years have passed. The house is gone now, but the windowsill has remained forever in my memory as my small home movie theater.